Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Privacy Matters with your hosts, Nick and Steve. We're two guys who feel that privacy is important, and especially concerning social media and all of our data that's floating out there in the ether. And we come together to talk about why it should matter for you as well. Steve, today, I know that we had last time we talked, we talked about turning people into products. Today, I think we want to talk about privacy as a whole, and do people even care? Do we even care that privacy is a thing, right? So I'll let you go ahead and kick us off.
Yeah, it's great to be with you again, Nick, and looking forward to this podcast here. And you bring up a great question: do people even do people even care about the privacy challenge? And what the statistics tell us is, for the most part, they don't at this point in time. But we're starting to see this gradual change in mindset, and we can talk about a few different things as it relates to that. But it's one of those situations: what's free, what's convenient, and what is everybody else? What's the cool thing that everybody else is doing, right? So everybody's still using these platforms. Everybody's got a way to connect with one another, and if I got to go over here, I got to step outside my comfort zone. So even though it may be safer and more advantageous, it's not 100% easier. And so that is what causes that pushback in making that change.
Okay, so I see. So when you say they don't care, it's not that they don't care, it's that it's just not as convenient.
Yeah, like a lot of things, right? Like, I remember when ESPN changed their online format where you could see the headlines and everything. And I remember the first few weeks going on there, it was just annoying to get used to the new format. And that's kind of like everything else that's out there. Is we are comfortable with what we know, we're comfortable with what we use on a daily basis. So this idea of, why do I need to step out? I've got nothing to hide, right? So who cares if somebody takes and uses my data? So I think you have a couple of things that you have to analyze here. One, who cares who takes my data, right? There's that idea that I have nothing to hide. Number two, it's stepping outside your comfort zone. And number three is really the cost of all that. I don't know if you've had any discussions or analyzed that yourself, but those are kind of the three things that I'm looking at.
Yeah, so I was, as I was like thinking about this topic and doing a little research, I found a Pew study that was pretty interesting. So it showed that like over 60% of Americans don't trust how their data is being used. They also don't feel that they can really go throughout a single day without giving up some piece of information or some piece of data about themselves. And I found that to be pretty interesting. And interestingly enough, they thought that more of their data went to the government by like 63%, as opposed to 62% who thought it was going to corporations. So wow. I don't know how you feel about that. I think that, that may be true, but I personally tend to think that more of it's going to corporations than to our federal government. But overall, I saw that 81% of people felt like they had lack of control over their data. And surprisingly, the same number felt that the risks outweighed the benefits, which blew me away. Because to your earlier point, I thought for sure people just didn't care, right? Like that they thought that the benefits were too great. There's too much of a barrier to deal with this stuff. And it's just like, whatever, the risks are worth it. I'm gonna go ahead and throw it all out there because, really I felt like they just didn't know. Like they don't know what the consequences of that are. But it seems like people are taking this pretty seriously. So I think like we've turned a corner where, we've seen the recent stuff with Facebook losing a bunch of data, other companies losing a bunch of data, not even social media companies, other major corporations that have lost our data over the past however many years. And there's an interesting number I want to pull up, but, I think like in total, I think this consensus is that this is important. Our data does matter, but what do we do about it? And who's responsible for protecting us? Right.
Yeah, those are a lot of good points there. And I love the statistics there to back that up. I think everything is trending in that direction, right? I think you have to be very naive to think that these platforms that exist out there are somehow kumbaya in nature. Everything's working perfectly behind the scenes and there's no nefarious activity. We talked a little bit the last time we got together of some of those things that are happening in the background of, oh, I look here and the same thing shows up over here that I was looking for over here. That's
right.
Not coincidence. But when we're talking about these statistics, one of the things I always like to point to is DuckDuckGo, which is an internet browser, right? And so people used to use probably Internet Explorer, Firefox, amongst others that are out there. But DuckDuckGo has slowly, quietly started to gain part of that market as it relates to the online browsing, for nothing other than it was free, it's simplistic, and people didn't really feel like they were stepping outside of their comfort zone. So I'm not trying to take it back to my points as much as to say, as we turn that corner and those numbers continue to rise that you're referencing, if these tools and capabilities in the social media world start to trend towards something similar, but offer all that safety of data security and data privacy, I think you'll start to see a shift. My concern is that right now, there probably isn't anything. I think everything is still out there to use your data. Like we said before, if it's free,
I think you're 100% right.
Then you're the customer.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right.
You're the product.
Yeah, and it's so funny because I threw out those kind of like fairly impressive stats, in my opinion, of the number of people who are concerned with this. Again, I thought that number was going to be far lower based on what we've seen. But then I did find another internet survey where they looked at, okay, so you say you're 81% of you are concerned with your privacy and how it's being used in social media by companies or by the government. And that was a Pew Research study. And we'll include all the links in the show notes here so you guys can check our sources, so to speak. But another study that I found showed that only 45% of people disabled or cleared their cookies, and only 36% of us, the global us, spend time to read the full privacy policy before we go ahead and click OK, right? So most people, even though they're saying that privacy is this massive important thing to them, don't even take the time. And I can tell you, I'm guilty of it. I've certainly clicked OK to get to my product before I've read the full policy. But it's just, I think part of it is that, okay, I know the risks, or I read the policy, and now what, right? So there aren't all those other great options out there to do these things. And if you look at, I keep pulling up some information here, but I think it's important. So here's the 10 motivations for using social media. Again, social media we pick on it a lot, but it's one of those things that doesn't really have a good alternative right now. Right.
Well, not just another alternative, but before you read that, I think the other thing is social media is kind of what's driving these issues with data privacy and data security. So we're not just picking on them.
It's certainly at the forefront of it.
That's right. Before social media, who was doing this? Maybe we had it from some internet browsing. Maybe we had it from some email servers. But social media put this into a different stratosphere. So go ahead. I know you said 100%. You had another stat there.
Yeah. So 100%. So they identified so what they did was they did a study. Multiple people have done studies, and they've kind of determined the 10 top motivators for using social media. And so just going through the list here, the first one, social interaction, information seeking, passing time, entertainment, relaxation, communication, convenience, expressing opinions, information sharing, and surveillance or knowledge about others. So if you take those 10 things, right, even one of them is a pretty strong motivator to use that kind of a tool, right? But if you look at the broad span of those 10 things, the draw is too great, right? Like you give up your left arm to use that tool if it's going to give you that much back in return, right? So like to say, here's a little bit of data, here's a PII, here's a this, here's a that, here's some access to me as an individual. Even though that privacy to me is important, I still it's like it's almost a drug. And obviously studies show it kind of is a drug, but getting that social validation and that feedback and that access to information is way more powerful than what goes into my privacy settings, is basically what it boils down to.
So when you were younger, did you play video games? Nintendo, Sega,
Sure.
something like that, right? So same here. I used to play Super Mario Brothers, and I think what you just described there, I can't help but kind of correlate it to the fact of when I was younger and I needed to pass the time, I would go outside, play sports, or I would jump on the video game, if it was cold out or at night, and play some video games to have some fun, right? Well, we're not playing video games anymore. At least you and I aren't playing video games anymore. So what do? If we need to pass the time or we need something to occupy us for a little bit, I'm certainly guilty of it. I go on some of these social media platforms for a minute, 2 minutes here and there throughout the day just to check in, see what's going on. Everything you just described. But I'd like to think I'm not as egregious as other folks, right? But it's still an addictive situation in the sense of I got nothing to do. I'm twiddling my thumbs. Oh, I'll just go here and check this out for a minute, or I'll go on this platform and check this out for a minute. That's your entertainment. And so to your point, I know you touched on a lot of them, but entertainment is one of the biggest things there, and it's free. We don't have to pay money. We don't have to pay the token. We don't have to go buy a game. We just got to click on an app and open it up.
Totally. And it's not only has it kind of made us all little voyeurs into everyone's little own private reality TV show, but it's also given everyone a platform to have their own reality TV show, right? So it's wild. It's a wild thing to think about, but the fact that there really is no recourse to the data we're giving up, and then again, how it's used. So I know most people have probably seen back in 2019 when Facebook was fined by the FTC $5 billion for misuse of personal data, right? And just to put that into perspective, because I read that number and I was like, that is a lot of money. I was like, damn, $5 billion. So I looked up, I wonder how much Facebook made that year. They made over $110 billion that year. So that $5 billion slap on the wrist, was not a huge dent. And this year they're on track to make $84 or $85 million, and something like 95% of that or 94% of that is ad revenue. I'm sorry, no, 97.6%. It's even higher, is from ad revenue. That's from our data. That's
so
our
that
data
ad revenue
being
comes
sold
from our profiles.
Yeah,
right?
100%.
They push the
without
ads.
our data, they have nothing.
Right. So they push the ads and the information to us based on. They push the ads and the advertising and the products to us based on the information that we give them for how much? Zero. So the return on investment is quite high right there. So they're going to pay that $5 billion and say thank you.
That's the thing. I mean, I think we need to shift the way we think about this. It's not only is it, do I care about my privacy, but what do I value my information? How do I value myself and the data that I can provide to the market, right? So if we are all, I know we're going back to this last topic, but if we're all products and I'm a product, then I have some value to sell you, right? So I think there needs to be a different type of, sense of ownership and the way that we deal with this information and this data. It should be a choice, right? If I want to share my data, I need to be compensated for that. A little cost benefit, a little cost sharing kind of deal, right? I mean, it should not just be me giving it up for free for what? For entertainment, for communication, for sharing, expressing opinions, and for spying on my ex-girlfriend, right? Like those are the things that people are using social media for. It's like, is that worth $84 billion? I don't know. I think no.
But it's worth something. We're not getting any of it.
No, but I'm saying yeah, exactly. I'm saying is that, that service, is that service worth $84 billion to me? I don't think so. I think that, there should be some kind of kickback or return or some, we're due.
So all good points there, and to kind of circle back to the main topic there of this data privacy and data security challenges, and why it continues to be at the forefront of this social media environment that we are engulfed in today. You brought up those points and statistics earlier about how things are evolving and changing, and people are starting to understand, what's at stake here a little more each and every day. We're certainly trending in the right direction that privacy does matter, right? It's not going in the direction
100%.
of privacy doesn't matter, we're fine. But there's still a long way to go here. And I think the more that we see, I used to challenge people, and I still would for anybody that listens to this, to say, look online, go to any of your search browsers and type in data privacy issue or data security issue. And each and every day there seems to be a different news article that talks about something that happened related to data security, data privacy across the globe. And so more of that information, as that comes out and people become more aware of it, I think the numbers that you talked about are only going to increase. However, I would argue that right now there isn't an alternative that exists to those social media platforms just yet that provides that data privacy that we're talking about. So if we talk browsers, we already mentioned this before, we talk browsers, there is an alternative to that. And I use it myself, DuckDuckGo, I go check that out. But when we talk, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, just to name a few, there aren't alternatives out there right now. And if there are alternatives, then they're so small and minuscule that they haven't gotten that attention and viral growth to put them in a platform where people are going to start using them, right?
Yep. Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, so I think that, and that's where it comes down to who owns the responsibility for this. Where does the responsibility lie to make sure that people have options and have their privacy respected? So, I don't think that it's 100% the government, but I think the government has some stake in this. If you look at other countries, look across Europe, they have the
GDPR, right?
Laws in place. You look at California, they're adopting California privacy laws. So,
but that goes
there is
back
a
to
bit of...
That goes back to what you talked about a second ago, right? Like a lot of those laws that they put in place, that's what prompts the notification when you go to a site or when you go to a platform and you have to accept the information there. You can accept that, and I'm guilty of it completely. Somebody sends me a news article and I want to read it. I can't click the button quick enough to just say, yeah, I want to go read this. But what did I just agree to, right? Like there's nothing in there. It is not a one sentence statement that is crystal clear, by the way. These are these extended legal statements that are ridiculous because they're put together to convolute the situation into a position of, well, if we put it this way, then people don't want to read it, number one, or they don't understand. We've made it in such, built it or transcribed it in such a way that it doesn't really make a bunch of sense. Or lastly, we've got every base covered, so it doesn't really matter as long as you say, as long as you click yes, then there is nothing you can do to it.
That's true. I mean, so to some extent, that's, some of those privacy, policies have been challenged in court and found to be like just so egregious in the rights that people are giving up that they were overthrown or had bits and pieces of it thrown out.
Is that in the U.S. or outside the U.S.?
In the
both?
I want to say it was in the both, but I want to say there was something in the U.S. recently. I'd have to look that up, but
yeah, Europe's been very proactive. They've been ahead of the game.
They have been, yeah. But so I think like you still have the law, right? Like you can say whatever you want in a privacy policy, but it can be challenged by the court system. So, but with aside, again, like this is a responsibility thing. Like an average citizen doesn't have the resources to take on Facebook or TikTok and TikTok's owned by the Chinese. Like who the hell are you going to take on anyway? Right. So, it's like, you don't have the resources. You read through this, even if you are one of the 36% that read through the full thing,
sure,
it's confusing. And when you read through it, you would never agree in a million years to any of the things, but you feel like you don't have an alternative, right? So it's like, okay, so am I just going to remove myself completely from social media because all the privacy policies suck, right? Or am I going to say, I don't have any other options, so, deal with the risks. I just got to deal with it.
Yeah, and social media is, I think when it first started out, it was all about seeing your buddies or your old high school or college friends, connecting with them. And, at this point in life, I'm not actually using it for that. I'm using it for some of the larger groups or programs on there. Like I take a road trip every summer. And so I try to go on there and learn about the national parks that I'm going to. So for me, it's informational in that sense. Or another example, I'll follow a sports team so I can get breaking news as it relates to who won the game, how the game's going, if they signed a free agent, things like that, because I get it through social media quicker than any other medium that's out there on the internet, right? So I'm not even using Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn really for any personal connection as much as an informational resource as it relates to industry, sports, travel, whatever it may be. And in that sense, I think, what other, I'm not sure what my other alternatives are right now.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I think it sounds like you're the minority. No, I think, I think a lot of people are using this to connect with people, right? Like sure. Snapchat, that's how young people hook up. And, if you look at TikTok or Instagram, if you have the clout on Instagram, but a lot on TikTok is how young influencers are connecting with their audience. They're getting followers. Sure. They're, building brand awareness for companies. I mean, all my nieces and nephews want to be TikTok influencers. My one niece and her girlfriend are on TikTok, and that's how they make a living, right? They use it as a way to connect with brands, promote brands for their following, and they get sure. paid for it, right? It's like, so I think like there's a lot of people that use these tools for a lot of different things, and like more and more to generate income streams, but it causes a reliance. Right. It compounds the problem because now your income is tied to it. Your followers are on there. It's like your switching costs gets higher. So it becomes more and more of a challenge to rip and replace this with something that is going to respect and honor privacy and treat people in a way that they should be treated. Right.
So in the engineering analytical world, we call that technical debt when you have to change to a new tool or platform, right? So it's the same thing sure. here. I'm not sure I'd call it technical debt as much as inconvenience debt to move those
it's
over.
Inconvenience debt, yeah.
It's all established. It's all in place. And so those things that we've talked about already here, that pull that exists by finding an alternative doesn't have the push because of everything that has to go into it to get there, right? It's such a right. heavy lift that I really don't care if somebody knows my name, where I'm from, my likes, my dislikes, all of that stuff, because it's much more difficult than to go over here, because that's going to take time, resources, headaches that I don't have right now. And oh, by the way, to how you just described the TikTok situation, that's just to get me there. How do I get all my followers there? So I'm going to, not only is it a challenge to do all of it, but now I'm going to lose money because there's no way all those people are moving over here just because of me. You probably get it. I don't have this number, but I imagine.
And not only just your followers, but your brand.
Your brand.
Not only your followers, but also the brand that's paying you to advertise this, right? Like they need to find value in this new thing as well. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely not going to be an easy problem to solve. And that's why I think, it needs to be a multi-tier approach. So, I mean, we need some government oversight, I think, on this whole industry.
Sure.
But at the same time, we also need, companies that have all of their stakeholders, all their shareholders' views kind of aligned, and they're not out there just to exploit. And I think that we're seeing some of that happening. I don't know. We'll see what happens with Elon and Twitter and where that goes. And if that changes, if that platform changes for the better or for the worse, who knows? But, I think it's
going to cost you $8
there's
to
no,
say that.
Yeah. But there's no question that there was a perception by him that the platform was going to hell, and he had to revive this thing. He had to step in and make some major changes, and felt that it was enough of a public good to do so. And I'm sure he figured he could make some money somehow on the back end, but
well, it only cost
46
billion. So
that's a lot of $8 verified stamps, right?
Verified stamps, yeah. When we
it's a lot of blue check marks.
We're gonna see. The point being, what we're talking about is all of those challenges. I don't know if you've ever been to Disney World. They got a ride there called the Carousel of Progress, and it talks about how it's from the World Fair in 1960 that Walt Disney put together, and it talks about in the 1800s people had all these tools and technologies for the time, and it's like, how could it get better? And it takes you through the 1930s, 1980s, like how could it even get better? And you don't realize what's around the corner is going to be better. And I think that's the mindset I personally have here, which is this is not Facebook is not going to be the social media the giant that it is today for the next 50 years. Instagram is not going to be. LinkedIn is not going to be. There's certainly a powerful force and a strong platform, and I exist on all of them. Why? So that I can stay connected to that information and with those individuals that are a part of those environments. But to tie it back to that carousel of progress, what's around the corner, we don't know what it is yet, but there's something that's going to be around the corner. And I think whatever that something is going to be tied more directly to the data privacy and data security ideals that you and I have talked about here tonight.
Hey, I think that's a great way to end this. Here, I totally +1 that, agree with it.
Verified
couldn't
check
have said
mark.
it better. Yeah, I'm going to put an $8 blue check mark on that comment. So, thanks for your time tonight, Steve. And
thanks, Nick.
I hope all of you out there, continue to remember that privacy matters. Thank you.